The reasons why serial killers feel compelled to murder multiple people have been extensively studied over the years, but no definitive answers have emerged. However, a significant factor seems to be childhood trauma and dysfunctional relationships with family members, particularly parents. In this list, we will examine both well-known and lesser-known serial killers who have presented disturbing yet seemingly pointless motives for their murder sprees. Lester Bauer. To steal a plane. Lester Bauer is a lesser-known serial killer who maintained his innocence until the end. However, the evidence that led to his conviction is compelling, and his motive for killing is one of the more unusual on this list. Bauer was born on November 20th, 1947 in Arlington, Texas, and before his conviction, he was a college-educated chemical salesman with no prior criminal record, who was married with 2 children. In October 1983, Bauer went to an aircraft hangar in Texas on the pretense of purchasing a disassembled plane from Bob Tate. It is unknown what happened after the 2 men met, but shortly after, the bodies of 4 men, including Tate, were discovered in the hangar. All were shot in the head at close range. Soon after, Bauer was arrested after pieces of the victim's aircraft were found in his home. At his trial, prosecutors argued that Bauer had killed Tate in order to steal an aircraft he had previously agreed to buy. He then killed the other 3 men when they unexpectedly showed up at the hangar. Investigators discovered parts of the plane inside his home, along with Fiocchi ammunition that was similar to what had been used in the killings. The prosecution argued that this type of ammunition provided a crucial link, as it was quite rare. Bauer initially lied to investigators, claiming he had never been to the hangar where the murders occurred. However, he later admitted being there, but insisted he was innocent, arguing that the men were alive when he left the disassembled plane he had purchased. However, crucially, he was unable to provide a receipt for the transaction. Despite the evidence being flimsy, on April 28, 1984, Bauer was found guilty of 4 counts of capital murder and was sentenced to death. The reason he murdered 4 innocent men was to steal the plane. After his conviction, lawyers argued vital information about possible drug trafficking was withheld by the prosecution, and that the killings may have been connected to this, especially as Tate had a history of selling cocaine. The defense lawyers also argued that the Fiocchi ammunition type was not rare and was widely sold for small game shooting and practice shooting. Despite numerous appeals, Bauer's conviction remained intact, even in the absence of physical evidence linking him to the crime scene, such as fingerprints or eyewitnesses. On June 3, 2015, Bauer was executed by lethal injection in the Huntsville unit and pronounced dead at 6:36 p.m., hours after the United States Supreme Court rejected a last-ditch appeal. In his final statement, Bauer thanked his family and friends for their support, as well as his attorneys, saying, "I have fought the good fight. I held my faith. I'm not going to say goodbye. I will simply say, until we meet again. I love you very, very much." His case is either the most ridiculous reason for killing 4 men, or it is a huge miscarriage of justice. Dana Gray. To buy shoes. Dana Gray is an extremely rare serial killer, not only because she is a woman, but because she killed to feed her spending habit. Dana was born on December 6, 1957 in California to Beverly Joyce Hetzel and Russell Armbrust. Her mother was a former beauty queen and MGM starlet, said to be aggressive and vain. The marriage broke up and Dana stayed with her mother. Their relationship was tumultuous, but when her mother fell ill with cancer, Dana admired the medical staff so much for caring for her that she decided to become a nurse. Eventually her mother passed away and Dana moved in with her father and later started working as a nurse. In October 1987, Dana married Tom Gray, but shortly after their marriage, Dana's spending got out of control and she accumulated a significant debt. The marriage was short-lived. In early 1993, Dana left Tom for her friend and lover, Jim Wilkins, and filed for divorce in June. Soon after, Dana was fired as a nurse for misappropriating painkillers, and she and her ex-husband filed for bankruptcy. Desperate for more money, the once caring nurse started her killing spree. On February 14, 1994, Dana murdered 86-year-old Norma Davis, an elderly woman she had lived with. Norma was found dead in her home. She had been strangled and stabbed 11 times. Just a couple of weeks later, on February 28th, another murder occurred in Canyon Lake, when 66-year-old June Roberts was found strangled and bludgeoned with a decanter. In both cases, police discovered that the killer had stolen valuables and credit cards from the victims' homes. In the days that followed, Roberts' daughter reported a series of suspicious transactions on her mother's credit card. These included a shopping spree where clothes, cowboy boots, perfume, vodka, a ski mask, and massages at a luxury spa were purchased. Descriptions of the woman seen using the cards were provided to the police. She was described as a petite, well-dressed blonde who drove a brown Cadillac. She was accompanied by either a small boy or a tall, dark-haired man. On March 16th, Dora Beebe, 87, was murdered in her Sun City condo. She had just returned home when a woman knocked on her door, asking for directions. Later that day, her boyfriend found her dead. She had been strangled and beaten to death with a steam iron. Hours later, a young, well-dressed woman withdrew $1,700 from Beebe's bank account. The following day, Dana Gray was arrested. Later, 58-year-old Dorinda Hawkins recounted how she nearly became a victim of Gray's murderous spree. On March 10, 1994, Dorinda was working at an antique shop in Lake Elsinore, Riverside County, when a young woman with blonde hair approached her for help with some merchandise. This woman, later identified as Gray, attempted to strangle Hawkins with a phone cord before stealing $5 from her purse and $20 from the cash register. Fortunately, Dorinda survived the attack and was able to provide detectives with a description of Gray. She recalled that the last thing she heard before blacking out was her attacker's soothing voice saying, "Relax, just relax." After her arrest, Gray admitted to the thefts, but denied murdering the woman. "I got desperate to buy things," she told detectives at the time. "Shopping puts me at rest." In 1988, she changed her plea to guilty, confessing to the murders of Beebe and Roberts and the attempted murder of Hawkins. As part of her plea deal, the judge agreed to not charge 36-year-old Gray for the third murder. She was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Dana currently resides at Central California Women's Facility. Was it all worth it just to go on a shopping spree? The answer has to be absolutely not. Richard Chase. The UFOs Made Me. There are few serial killers as sadistic and cruel as Richard Chase, who killed at least 6 people in the most evil way possible. Nicknamed the Vampire of Sacramento, Chase was a disturbed individual who claimed UFOs were responsible for his killing spree. From an early age, Chase mistreated animals and even killed the family cat. He later progressed to eating rabbits raw and killing and eating dogs. Despite these early traits, Chase was popular at school and respected by his peers. But as he entered adulthood, he changed and began to withdraw from friends and family, and became a heavy user of marijuana and LSD. He also discovered he was impotent, which affected his relationship with women. Chase also developed hypochondria, often claiming that his heart would stop beating or that his pulmonary artery had been stolen. He believed holding oranges on his head would allow vitamin C to absorb into his brain. Additionally, he thought his skull bones were shifting, prompting him to shave his head to observe this. At one point, he began cutting out photos of human organs from a medical book and pasting them all over his bedroom to try and figure out what was wrong with them. However, despite his claims, examinations by doctors revealed there was nothing physically wrong with him, although mentally he was quite unwell, and when his behaviour became more and more erratic, he spent time in a psychiatric unit and was placed on a variety of psychotropic drugs, which seemed to help. But his mother didn't like the effect the drugs had on her son, because she felt they made him like a zombie. So without consulting doctors, she weaned him off his medication. On December the 29th, 1977, Chase killed his first human where he shot 51-year-old Ambrose Griffin in a drive-by shooting. The killing was completely random. Apparently, Chase was angry with his mother and took it out on an innocent man. His next victim was Teresa Wallen, who was 3 months pregnant. Chase pounced on her as she took out the trash. After killing her, he mutilated and abused her body, removing several organs and drinking her blood before stuffing dog feces down her throat. Just 4 days later, on January the 27th, 1978, Chase broke into the home of Evelyn Miroth and proceeded to murder everyone inside the building, including Evelyn's friend, Dan Meredith, as well as her 6-year-old son, Jason, and 22-month-old nephew, David Ferreira. Similar to Teresa Wallen, Chase abused the adult bodies, and when he left, he took the dead body of baby David with him and stole Evelyn's car to drive back to his apartment, where he decapitated the baby and consumed parts of his brain. He then dumped the body in a garbage bin. When subsequently asked why he did this, Chase claimed it was because he was hungry. Shortly after the murders, Chase was arrested, but was uncooperative with the police and a psychiatrist, and his case went to trial. Throughout the proceedings, Chase incorrectly claimed he was Jewish. On May 8, 1979, the jury found Chase guilty of 6 counts of first-degree murder and rejected the argument that he was not guilty by reason of insanity. Chase was sentenced to die in the gas chamber. He was sent to San Quentin prison, where his erratic behaviour continued. While incarcerated, he wrote several documents claiming that his reasons for killing were linked to UFOs, the CIA, the Mafia, and airline disasters. In one of these documents, Chase stated that UFO intelligence had begun tracking him 6 months before his murder spree. He also theorized that he was born as a result of UFO cloning experiments, and he claimed that his mother had been secretly poisoning him since he was 1 year old. Chase also mentioned that he was born with a Star of David symbol on his forehead, claiming it was the result of a UFO cloning experiment. In late 1979, he considered appealing his death sentence, believing that his life had been in danger during the time of the murders, which he thought could justify his actions under California law. However, no appeals were lodged. Thankfully, he never got the chance, because at 11:05 a.m. on December the 26th, 1980, Chase was discovered dead in his prison cell at San Quentin. An autopsy determined that he died from an overdose of Sinequan, a drug prescribed for treating depression and hallucinations. Chase had taken 36 times the normal dose and had been secretly hoarding the pills in his cell, without the knowledge of the officers. Next to the bed were 4 sheets of paper covered in handwriting. 2 of them contained drawn squares filled with an unknown code. On the other 2 pages was a message in which Chase indicated that he might drink some pills which could cause his heart to stop beating. Richard Chase was deemed sane when he committed his murders, because there was an element of premeditation. But would a sane man state that UFOs were the reason he killed 6 innocent people? It seems unlikely. Dennis Nilsen. Please don't leave. Dennis Nilsen was a notorious Scottish serial killer and necrophile who murdered and tortured at least 12 young men in the 2 homes he lived in North London between 1978 and 1983. He primarily targeted homeless individuals and gay men, often strangers he met in bars or on public transport. Nilsen lured his victims to his home with offers of alcohol or a place to stay. Nilsen's first murder occurred 18 months after the breakdown of his relationship with David Galichan. The breakup was a major turning point in Nilsen's life and contributed to his feelings of loneliness that ultimately led to his murderous spree. On December 29, 1978, Nilsen invited a young man back to his home, but the next morning he couldn't face the man leaving him alone again, so to keep him, he strangled the man and put his head in a bucket of water and drowned him. He then washed the corpse and put it back in his bed and spent the next night sleeping with it and defiling the dead body. He then hid the corpse under his floorboards for 7 months before removing it and burning the decaying remains in his back garden, masking the smell with tires. This was a recurring theme for his next 11 victims, retaining their bodies before dissecting them and either burning their remains or flushing them down the toilet. When he later moved to Muswell Hill, London, he continued killing until the flesh started blocking up the drains. When Nilsen called out a specialist to unblock the drains, his grisly crimes were discovered. After his arrest, Nilsen quickly provided extensive details about his killing spree, confessing to the murders of 15 young men and attempts to murder 7 others. He exhibited no remorse for his actions. During his trial, he pleaded not guilty despite his prior confessions, claiming diminished responsibility due to a mental defect. However, the physical evidence was too much and included a cooking pot that Nilsen used to boil skulls, and on November 3, 1983, Nilsen was sentenced to life in prison, without eligibility for parole for at least 25 years. This was later changed to a whole life tariff in December 1994, which effectively meant Nilsen would never be released from prison, a punishment he accepted and declined to appeal. So what was the motive behind Nilsen's heinous crimes? In his own chilling words, the reason he killed and kept the bodies of his victims was that he couldn't bear to be alone. He never wanted any of the young men he picked up to leave, so he devised a plan to ensure they never would. This is what he said. When under pressure of work and extreme pain of social loneliness and utter misery, I am drawn compulsively to a means of temporary escape from reality. This is achieved by taking increased amounts of alcohol and plugging into stereo music, which mentally removes me to a high plane of ecstasy, joy, and tears. This is a totally emotional experience. I relive experiences from childhood to present, taking out the bad bits. When I take alcohol, I see myself drawn along and moved out of my isolated prison flat. I bring with me people who are not always allowed to leave because I want them to share my experiences and high feelings. After spending 35 years incarcerated, on May 12, 2018, Dennis Nilsen died in agony at HMP Full Sutton in East Yorkshire. Ed Kemper. Because I am angry with my mother. Edmund Emil Kemper is an American serial killer convicted of murdering 7 women and 1 girl between May 1972 and April 1973. Kemper was born on December 18, 1948 in Burbank, California. As a child, he was close to his father and was deeply affected when his parents divorced in 1957. He stayed with his mother, with whom he had a severely dysfunctional relationship. She was a neurotic, domineering alcoholic who frequently belittled, humiliated, and abused her son, and regularly mocked him about his huge size. By the age of 13, he was already 6 feet 4 inches tall. His mother refused to show him affection out of fear that it would turn him gay, and told him that no woman would ever love him. This heartless and abusive treatment by his mother impacted Kemper in ways that no one could have imagined. From an early age, his sadistic nature surfaced when he buried his pet cat alive, then dug it up, decapitated it, and mounted its head on a spike. Things escalated when at the age of 14, he went to live with his paternal grandparents on their ranch in the foothills of the Sierra Nevada. Less than a year after moving in, Kemper, aged 15, killed his grandmother with a rifle following an argument. He shot her once in the head and twice in the back, then stabbed her several times. When his grandfather returned home, Kemper fatally shot him in the driveway. After the incident, Kemper called his mother, who instructed him to contact the police. When questioned by the police, he stated that he just wanted to see what it felt like to kill Grandma. He later explained that he killed his grandfather because he believed the man would be angry with him. Authorities were shocked that a 15-year-old could kill in such a cold-blooded and brutal way, and court psychiatrists diagnosed him with paranoid schizophrenia. He was sent to Atascadero State Hospital, a maximum security facility located in San Luis Obispo County for mentally ill criminals. However, on December 18, 1969, Kemper's 21st birthday, he was released on parole. Against the recommendations of the hospital psychiatrists, he was placed into the care of his mother. The abusive relationship between Kemper and his mother continued, and eventually he managed to save enough money to move out and live with a friend in Alameda. He also purchased a 1969 Ford Galaxy, and whilst driving around, observed a significant number of young women hitchhiking and started picking them up, initially letting them go without harming them. But after a while, he started to experience homicidal sexual urges, which he referred to as little zapples. With his kill kit stored in his car, he eventually acted on these urges. Between May 1972 and April 1973, Kemper murdered 5 college students, 1 high school student, his mother, and his mother's best friend. He killed his mother after she returned home from a night out. When she fell asleep, he hit her with a claw hammer and slit her throat with a penknife, before decapitating her, putting her head on a shelf, and screaming at it for an hour. He also cut her tongue out and tried to put it in the waste disposal. He later murdered his mother's best friend and put both corpses in a closet. After his arrest, Kemper gave explicit details of what he had done to his murder victims. Most of them were decapitated, dismembered, and their corpses defiled. On May 7, 1973, Kemper was indicted on 8 counts of first-degree murder. He was advised to plead not guilty by reason of insanity. On November 1st, Kemper took the stand to testify. He explained that he killed the victims because he wanted them, quote, for myself, like possessions. Despite his efforts to convince the jury he was insane, they came back declaring Kemper sane and guilty on all charges. Kemper requested the death penalty, specifically asking for death by torture. In the end, he did not get his wish and was sentenced to 7 years to life for each count and sent to the California Medical Facility in Vacaville. Over the years, Kemper has been denied parole several times, but at the time of writing this, he is wheelchair-bound and suffering from diabetes and coronary heart disease. He has been the subject of multiple books, documentaries, and even songs. But why did he kill? Well, it seems his resentment towards women started because of his mother. In interviews, Kemper had stated that he often searched for victims after having arguments with his mother, and that she refused to introduce him to women attending the university where she worked at. He recalled, "She would say, 'You're just like your father. You don't deserve to get to know them.'" Psychiatrists, along with Kemper himself, have suggested that the young woman was surrogates for his ultimate target, his mother.